Welcome to this short talk on travel writing, also known as travel literature. And I want to discuss why travel writing is so interesting. But before we do that, let's just quickly look at some broad definitions. Travel writing or travel literature. Well, both center on the movement of at least one protagonist, one person, character, to or across a foreign or unfamiliar land. Travel writing is a more general term, and that includes literary and non literary texts. You can see in the cloud to the right a list of some of the different forms or genres which travel writing can take. And this list doesn't include everything. Diaries, letters, postcards, newspaper, magazine articles, blogs, essays, official reports, promotional brochures, poetry, ethnographies, as well as travel books. Ethnography is to do with anthropology and the study of different cultures and peoples. Travel literature is more restrictive. So travel literature is more focused on literary texts. And we can think about three rough categories of travel writing, taking the broader approach. On the left-hand side, if you think of a gradient, you have nonfiction. On the right-hand side, we have fiction. And in the middle, there is literary non-fiction, so some kind of combination of the two. And on the right, you can see three pictures of three different books. Gulliver's Travels would be thought of travel writing is definitely more fictional, coming from the imagination of Jonathan Swift. The bottom left, you have the Motorcycle Diaries written by Che Guevara, the Cuban revolutionary, and this is thought of as being literary nonfiction, so nonfiction written in a style which is very entertaining and interesting. And on the right, in the bottom right, we have a Lonely Planet guidebook, which, though useful and interesting, is deemed to be more factual, so nonfiction. And some of the common features of literary nonfiction travel writing, so thinking back to the Motorcycle Diaries, that kind of thing, it would be a personal account, usually written in the first person using I, often descriptive, telling you about a place or a people. As literary nonfiction, it aims to entertain as well as inform, and contains a considered narrative. That means that it's kind of planned, more detailed and more formal than a blog. Although, as we've said, there's a kind of a wide divergence in the travel genre. It's not easy to always put things in boxes. Travel writing has a long and rich history, and these are just a few dates that I picked out from a Wikipedia article on the topic. So starting in the 2nd century CE, Pausanias wrote the description of Greece. Then in the article, there's a bit of a leap until the 12th century, and the journey through Wales and the description of Wales by Gerald of Wales, many Wales repeated there. And between 960 and 1279 in the East, during the Chinese Song dynasty, the genre was called travel record literature, Youji Wenshui in Mandarin, and early Chinese writers often used narrative, prose, essay, and diary style. In early Arabic literature, detailed travel journals like those of Ibn Battuta in the 14th century added to the canon, and by the 16th century, accounts were emerging about travels to India and Persia as the world started to open up and travel became more frequent. In the 18th century, Europe became a center for travel writing. Captain James Cook's diaries to Australia, and Alexander von Humboldt, the Prussian aristocrat and traveler who grew up in Germany and traveled all over the world into South America and other places. In 1839, Charles Darwin published The Voyage of the Beagle on his long expedition, which was an important travel narrative because it informed his later Origin of the Species and his theory of natural selection. Here are great travel and quotes they have said. They're all mixed up, the pictures and the quotes. Can you match them? And before you do that, can you say who they are? Can you identify them? Take a moment, pause the video if you want to. Well, on the left we have Jack Kerouac, who is the American Beat Generation writer of On the Road, which was written in and published for 1957. Then next to him we have Bill Bryson, who wrote and writes famous travel books. In 1998, he published Walk in the Woods, which was made into a movie like On the Road. Next to him, we have two women. The first one is Mary Kingsley, who wrote in the Victorian era and famously wrote Travels in West Africa in 1897. And number 4 is Mary Wollstonecraft, who wrote letters written in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, published in 1796. So, can you match the numbers with the letters here? Who do you think said what? And I'll just give you a few seconds, pause the video if you want to, and then I'll tell you which they are. Well, starting on the left-hand side again, let's start with Mr. Kerouac. What do you think he said? Well, he is matched with C. The air was soft, the stars so fine, the promise of every cobbled alley so great that I thought I was in a dream. And then we have Bill Bryson. Which one do you think he matches with? Letter D. Traveling is more fun. Hell, life is more fun if you can treat it as a series of impulses. So 2 is matched with D. 3. Mary Kingsley. She is matched with the fishing quote. There is one distinctive charm about fishing. Its fascinations will withstand any climate. And we have 4. B. I gazed around with rapture and felt more of that spontaneous pleasure. So that's just a little activity to get you thinking about writers and their quotes. And what you can see is that they all have this kind of ecstatic elation at discovering and being in a new place and seeing nature often. Now let's look at an example of one of Bill Bryson's, who I mentioned before, one of his texts, and this is a literary nonfiction text called Bill Bryson's African Diary, published in 2002. This is a very short text, just 60 pages, but it is in promotion of a good cause, CARE International, which is a charity supporting people all over the world. In this case, Bill Bryson is describing his trip to Kenya using a first-person account to promote the charity's work. To make an impact, he reports on real people, for example, Mr. William Gumbo, a farmer, and he uses factual places in his description, showing that he really went on this trip. The Lamwe Valley, for example, in Kenya. Bryson uses humor to create and maintain interest for the reader, also a combination of facts and description. For example, Mr. Gumbo owns 4 acres of good but semi-arid land in the most gorgeous setting. So this combination of specific detail with a little bit of description creates and maintains interest. He uses direct speech, making it feel like the reader is there witnessing conversation, so the use of dialogue, and he plays around with sentence length, tending to use friendly informal language, which adds to the text's persuasive power. Also, other famous texts, one I mentioned before is On the Road, published in 1957 by Kerouac, and deals with the Beat Generation. So this is an American novel in a hedonistic, fast-paced search for meaning through alcohol, sex, drugs, and jazz music. The author, Jack Kerouac, lived passionately. Quote from him, "The only people for me are the mad ones." And unfortunately, he died relatively young due to the effects of drinking heavily, aged 47. Similar to The Great Gatsby, which was published in 1925, a little bit earlier, On the Road is an exploration of personal freedom and deals with the American dream, whether it's realistic. Kerouac developed in his writing a style which he called spontaneous prose, which can be best demonstrated by the fact that he just took 3 weeks to write the full novel. Now, in the 21st century, some people say that with less unexplored places, globalization, and access to internet, this problem of traveling with climate change and the carbon dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere, causing global warming through combustion of fuels in planes and other forms of transport, and the difficulty of finding a unique voice among all the millions and billions of people on the planet. Some people are concerned that this may be the end of the travel writing genre. All of these concerns. Well, I guess that this is a legitimate concern, and I personally have felt that at times. But I do think that there are many potential solutions, and there's still much to explore and re explore. The great thing about travel writing is that it comes from your personal perspective. So until you see something, you haven't really seen it. And when you see it and explain it, it's like it's being seen and explained for the first time. And with this connected and globalized world, it also comes with the advantage that even though the world is big, it is connected and there are diverse audiences to engage with. And you can share your blog or you can share your writing with many other people. And yes, climate change is a problem, but it can also release new forms of technology, perhaps solar travel in the future, um, perhaps more old forms of transport like train transport will become popular, a slowing down of living in order to live life more fully. And it may even change our concepts of travel. So instead of always thinking about travel outside to new places, we may become more interested in that sort of mindfulness, the inner exploration, going inside of our mind and talking about and writing about what lies there. We can also travel online, as we've done in this lockdown due to the COVID-19 epidemic. We can share our thoughts and visit museums in the online space. And if we have problems finding a new unique voice, we can think about all of the literature that's come before and the vast canon and pick out different styles here and there and try to combine them. The modernist, the romantic, Jack Kerouac, and think about how we can find our own idea and carve out our own niche in the wonderful world of travel writing. We're in the middle of this digital media internet revolution right now in the world. Technology is continuously improving. Blogging is the act of regularly maintaining a digital presence with recorded thoughts or personal reflections on topics. So frequently people do that on their own website or on YouTube or you could argue on Twitter or Instagram or some other social media platform. Blog texts are often short, punchy, and easy to read, informal. This could be that with technology being so quick and lifestyles being fast, people want to make an impression quickly nowadays. Frequently, pictures and subheadings, big fonts are used, but not always, in order to add to this overall impression. And travel blogs, thinking of travel writing, which is the topic of this talk, travel blogs are ubiquitous. They're everywhere and cater for different interests. So these are some popular ones. One is called Fluent in 3 Months, which deals with language learning, learning fast. There's another one called Journey Woman, which I found, which is catered to the solo female traveler. And Rail Adventures with Matthew Woodard, who looks at all kinds of interesting routes and interesting trains in the world. So there's really something for everybody, and it's just waiting for you to go and discover it and become a travel writer or a travel reader. And really great for young students who may need an easier form, an easier way into this genre. So, what could be some of the challenges and rewards for travel readers, as I mentioned in the previous slide? Well, I thought I would start with this little quotation from the American writer Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he said famously that it's not the destination, it's the journey. So we'll come to the rewards, and that's on the right hand side. But first, the challenges. Well, I think for all readers, but young readers, older readers, knowing where to begin is difficult because the travel writing genre is so vast and there's so many different ways to get into it. You might just not want to start. There's also the difficulty of taking an interest in something intangible be it a concept, place, or time. And what I mean is, if you've never been there yourself or witnessed it yourself, it may not be that real to you. Also, maybe challenging to understand unusual writing styles, why an author is doing something, their purpose, or their specific dialect, their kind of language may be tricky. But what are some of the rewards if you persist and if you go for it? Well, you can find inspiration for a personal adventure. So, reading a book, a travel book, is a great way to prepare, either a non fictional book or a literary nonfiction or a fictional narrative. It can really inspire you. You can live that feeling, that vicarious feeling of the sublime and romantic nature of life, which romantics like John Keats wrote about in their poetry. You can sense it, and then you can go yourself, like Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods. You can go to the area and you can feel it yourself. And you can gain a fresh perspective about a place, people, or culture. So, reading about it either beforehand or after can really infuse your experience with so much more energy and so much more joy. End of the talk about travel writing, travel literature. I hope that you have enjoyed it. If you have, please give the video a like or feel free to subscribe to the channel. And all the best. Take care.